Hey, what's good, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Can't Believe I Made It podcast. I am your podcast host, Desi Abeda, as well as your high-performance mentor and performance dietitian. Today's episode is really special. I had the opportunity over the past year or two of not only just exploring my relationship with alcohol, but as we celebrate January and driest January and dry January for those that are celebrating or for those that even tried it, I just want to give you a round of applause real quick, because I think if we can build awareness around habits that are concerning for us, or maybe habits that we know aren't in alignment with what the long-term goal is, I think once you get an opportunity to examine that, it's a really special thing. But looking back maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago, I started to examine my relationship with alcohol. And one of the things that I started doing is I was noticing that I was constantly having a beer with dinner. It was just something that I did. And what I think was really influential in my life at the time was my wife speaking to me and saying, like, hey, I don't know how you feel about this, but I'm just sort of wondering, as our kids grow up, do we want them thinking that, like, dad just has a beer with dinner no matter what? Like, that's just what dad does. And that was kind of the first moment where it got me thinking, and it actually turned me into looking for non-alcoholic brands, because my mom and dad's alcoholic brand was O'Doul's, and having tasted it today, like, it doesn't taste good. So for me, I was on the search for something, because I'm more of like an IPA drinker or a sour or maybe a Pilsner or something like that. So I went searching for a brand that could actually emulate the taste of what those beers provided, because I was like, you know what? If I'm trying to understand why I'm drinking this beer, it just might be because the cue is like, it's dinner time, I'm tired, let me go ahead and do something. What I think was really cool about that is I went ahead and I found Grüvi by chance. And over the last 2 years, we've been having conversations and talking about their product and some of our social media outlets and things like that. But I finally got Anika Sawni, who is the co-founder of Grüvi, to jump on the podcast. And we were able to record this before the holiday as we were talking about dry January. And I think, what better way to celebrate dry January and driest January and helping us to explore a relationship with alcohol than someone who ended up switching from neuroscience into the non-alcoholic beverage industry, where she knew nothing about how to be successful there, but through her own mindfulness journey and through her own enthusiasm, got extremely gritty and was able to find a way to not only just land herself in a position where she's a successful entrepreneur, but also landing herself on the Forbes list 30 under 30. And so for so many reasons, I am so excited to be able to not only just give you a front row seat into the conversation, but also get to know Anika, because having just had that conversation with her, I feel so fulfilled in not only my endeavors as an individual, but my endeavors as a creative. And for any of you out there who are thinking about stepping into that next big step where you don't really know what to expect, I think Anika is a perfect person to emulate your life after, because sometimes we just don't know what's going to happen. And maybe we don't feel comfortable with what's about to happen, or maybe we don't have the knowledge needed. But if you step out in faith, you surround yourself by a community of people who are going to push you and help you to uplift yourself, some really beautiful things happen. So without further ado, here's Anika's episode. Anika, you're a real one. Congratulations on all your success. I am so excited to continue to see that rise. Later, y'all. Okay, Anika. So generally I would celebrate the holidays, but you and I were just literally chatting right now. And instead of celebrating, you've actually been trying to recuperate because an illness has struck. Merry Christmas, by the way.
Yeah, no, I know. Definitely unfortunate time. I always say this happens too. Like, you're busy, you're go, 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 and once you actually have that moment to, okay, it's a break, we can relax, your body goes, oh, this is the
Oh,
perfect time to get sick, right?
yeah.
So finally feeling a little bit better at least.
Oh, I'm glad. I tend to find that too. Anytime that I get a break, because I'm constantly go, 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 and I have my mind going a million miles at every moment. When I do get those moments to be still, I almost feel like the immune function of the body is like, okay, cool. We've been holding off on this, so I'm just going to give this to you because here you go. You have rest. So I don't know if that's been
Exactly.
apparent in your life. We're going to get into that, obviously. But aside from that, how have the holidays been for you?
It's been nice, it's a little bit different for us because we'll get into it, but with the nature of Grüvi and having a non-alcoholic lineup, like we go right into our busiest season. We're heading into dry January. So it's a
Yeah.
little bit harder to, fully relax and rejuvenate at this time of year as we're getting geared up for our biggest month.
Hmm.
And so I'm looking forward to February because the whole company takes a week off in February, the first week, so that we can actually recharge and recoup at that point. So I'm still
Yeah.
in that little bit of stretch, but I mean, it's always nice to spend some time with family. We're actually up in the mountains in Colorado. So we'll get some skiing in and enjoy the snow.
Jealous. I was actually going to ask you because I saw the timestamp at MST, and so I'm based in Arizona. There's not a whole lot of people that share that same timestamp. So I was going to ask you where you were at and what you're going to be doing, but we're actually going to be snowboarding at the end of this week. So you and I will be on mountains somewhat in the same time zone at the same time. So
Nice.
I
Yeah.
hope you have a great time.
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, I'm always all over the place, I feel like. So Denver's been our home base, and we love to, when we can get on the mountains. My whole family loves to ski. But I've actually been in LA, and I'm originally from Toronto, actually.
Nice, nice. Well, I mean, Annika, I'm excited for a lot of different reasons. When I first reached out, I was like, this is kind of a shot in the dark. I've been collaborating and communicating with the brand of Groovy for almost 2 years, having used the product over the last 3 years, and we'll kind of get into how you all have been incredibly incremental in a lot of the changes that I've made in reference to examining my relationship with alcohol. So I definitely want to give you flowers at some point in our conversation. But one of the things that came up, and I'm wondering if you can shed some light into what I would perceive as like a feeling of proud or maybe happiness. I'm not going to speak for you, but I came across the Forbes 30 under 30, and your awesome name was there, celebrating all the cool things that you're doing. And I found myself getting to a point where I'm like, all right, I know that there's a Forbes 40 under 40. I'm turning 38 here in a couple days. I can do it. So I want to ask you, getting on that list, does it mean anything to you? Are there any feelings that come with that? Anything that you can share.
Of course. I mean, I think every time it gets brought up now, it's almost been 2 years. We're coming on 2 years since I've been on the list. And I feel like
Mhm.
every time it gets mentioned, I'm like, wait a second, is that still true? Like, did that
Yeah,
actually happen?
yeah,
It really
yeah.
is a pinch me, moment and experience. And I think it was really cool how it came to be because I, was a small business. Like we had started Grüvi, we were 3 years in. And so I think it's just common to have the mentality that like, we're just the small guys, we're just getting started. And people on Forbes, that's the hot
It's
shots. Those are the
huge.
people that like made it, right? And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I would never have thought that like I had a chance. And so kind of what happened is our PR team was, doing their thing and reaching out, sharing the Grüvi story. And one of the Forbes writers was like, wow, this is a really amazing story and mission that this company has. And then she was like, how old are the founders? Like, I'd love to nominate them for the under 30 list. And so they came back and they shared this info with me. And right away, I was like, I just was
yeah,
in disbelief because I was like, okay, we'll submit this application and stuff, but there's no
yeah.
chance, right? Um, we're not going to be able to compete. How are we going to be able to stand out in front of, all of these other amazing businesses and entrepreneurs and artists, etc., that, are in the running for Forbes under 30? And so I put my best foot forward, but at the same time, I think in my head at that point, I was, I didn't have much confidence, I think, still in myself. And
Yeah.
so time goes and I didn't hear back. And then about like 8 months later, I get an email, not even from Forbes, but I get an email from just like a partner being like, congrats, I saw your name on the Forbes list today. And I was like,
Isn't
wait,
that how it happens? It's like, what?
what? I like pull up my phone, I start scrolling as fast as I can, and I see my name on there. And I think it's just been really one of those. I mean, it's a great credibility for the brand,
Yeah.
and to be able to, it starts to snowball just people reaching out and discovering the brand. And so I think that's been a big piece. But for me, what's been really special about it too is the community that it's opened me up to.
Yeah.
So many other amazing entrepreneurs that I've been able to meet and learn from. And I think that that was actually this realization point where I had been so head down in my own world, in my Grüvi world with my Grüvi team, that I
Yeah.
forgot to kind of, look up and find, other people experiencing the same thing. I had some great friends, but friends that weren't necessarily running their own businesses. And so it was hard for them to like relate to my own experience. And so being
Yeah.
on the Forbes list really opened my eyes to, even if someone has a completely different business or is a singer, right? Like, that's a completely
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
job to what I'm doing, but we can relate on so many levels, just the struggles and the ups and downs and the celebrations of entrepreneurship together.
Entrepreneurship's a really beautiful thing. And it sounds incredibly cliche, but it's not for the lighthearted. You have to have a deep inherent belief that somehow, some way you're gonna make it, which is exactly why I've created this Can't Believe I Made It podcast, because I have had some of those same feelings. So Anika, I was doing some research on just not only just the Forbes 30 under 30, but I came across a really cool piece, and I might be butchering the name, but it's in McLean. Um, you're holding the prosecco in a yellow dress, just hitting this very girl boss, like badass pose, right? There's just an aura coming off of you. And I saw it and I was like, damn, like power, let's go, let's go. Having a 7-year-old girl myself, like I want to like create opportunities for her to see women doing phenomenal things in the space. And I came across it and I was like, you know what? I feel like my first question outside of the Forbes 30 under 30 question is what inspired the values and what was the inspiration behind Groovy, and how did that sort of align with where your personal values were at the time? Because I remember reading the story and I was like, this is actually pretty freaking dope.
Yeah. So, it's been about, we're coming up on our 5th year of Groovy. So we started in
That's
2019.
crazy.
And actually, my brother, Nikki, is my co founder. And
Hmm.
so the inspiration behind Groovy really came from our own natural, exploration with our relationship with alcohol. And so
Hmm.
essentially, we grew up, we've always cared about our health in many different ways, often led by my father, who's just always had a passion for, health and wellness and big cyclist. And, at one
Hmm.
point was trying to get to the Olympics, all of these different things.
Yeah.
And, and so with that, I actually went into my degree at McGill and I was studying neuroscience. And so I thought I wanted to go into the med field, again, being able to help support people. I was just so intrigued by the brain and how it's evolving
Yeah.
every day, how the plasticity of it, how we can change it. And with that, it was really in my last year of university that I started to question that relationship with alcohol. And I think many can relate to those college years of where alcohol is involved. And sometimes it's just so normalized, really, right? And
Yeah.
I wasn't even thinking about how much I was consuming. I wasn't consuming more or, had an unhealthier relationship with alcohol in comparison to any of my friends at university. But in that last year of university, I was really focused on school. I wanted to, had set some goals to finish with a 4.0 GPA. Again, thought I was applying to med school, so I had some grades that I needed to
Yeah.
get to. And I was like, why, am I going out? Then I have a hangover. Then I can't function well the next day. And just started to be like, how does alcohol actually fit into this healthful lifestyle?
Yeah.
And my brother had a similar journey. He's 5 years older than me, so he was already in the workforce, a bit more of that work hard, party hard culture. And so he's the
Yep.
same thing. He was like, I care about my health all week long. I'm really focused on, eating well, all of these things, working out. Then on the weekend, turns into happy hour with the colleagues and yada yada. And it's this kind of vicious cycle, right? And as we started to explore and look for options within the category, we realized that there was a huge gap. There was one, nothing that really tasted good. And again, this is 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you had non-alcoholic beer. It was around. It's been around for years, right? But one, it had a really strong negative stigma. Two, like I said, it did not taste very appealing. It was very much a less than option for people.
Hmm.
And so we saw this opportunity to really create something different, like the complete opposite of what was available at the time, something that was exciting, breathed life and energy into the category where people could reach for the drink and feel like proud to be drinking a non-alcoholic option, not like, oh, I want to hide it and I don't want people to know I'm not drinking tonight. And so we
Yeah.
really focused on, taste first and foremost. That was the biggest hesitation that we had with the category, but also variety. So we're the only brand to launch both beers and wines and sangria and multiple different varietals within that. And also making it accessible, making it easy so that, again, in any setting, any occasion, whether it's at a concert, at a restaurant, just heading to a party, you had an option. And we're really not anti-alcohol, but it was about providing that option. So in any moment, you felt like you had a choice and a healthful choice, right?
Yeah.
Um, to choose. And at the time, I still drank, but in certain occasions, I didn't want to drink, right? And
Hmm.
um, then you're left with water, which just frankly is not
Just not the
nearly as
same.
exciting and fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that too, because I think if we're looking at taste and then function, if you will, because I would definitely, as a dietitian, like I know like the functional beverage category, you have to have things in it in order to be labeled as that. But I
Yep.
do think it serves as a function because if you are able to maximize your sleep and your energy the next day, utilizing a beverage like this, which is in place of something like alcohol, I do believe it improves function. But you mentioned taste earlier. I think that was the thing, Anika, when I first had the IPA version. I tasted it and I was like, oh my God, it doesn't have a horrible aftertaste. Like it actually tastes like an IPA. And I remember, and I'm sure maybe a lot of your consumers kind of come to this, having you guys just starting out in 2019, the pandemic hit where a lot of us were at home having access to things that are going to help us to disconnect from the world, burning outside of us. But
Yep.
for me, like that was the first time that I had it. And I remember thinking to myself, was like, if I'm telling myself that I have a couple beers with dinner and that's just part of what I do, what if there was another way? And that's what was really exciting. It was just not only just seeing the taste piece, but also the function. So, Annika, I'm wondering for you, as you guys are in development now, 5 years, what sort of things are you hearing from your consumers from the standpoint of how it's improving their health or what it's doing, just them examining their relationship with alcohol?
Yeah, same thing like you said. To me, it's like this biggest life hack, and
It
I'm
really is.
out here and trying to yell that from the mountaintops because I think that what's buried it for so long is that negative stigma and how intertwined alcohol has been in society in so many ways. And so just giving people permission to question that relationship, to ask themselves, hey, like,
Yeah.
let's be more conscious about this decision. Let's be mindful. Every time I'm going to drink, it doesn't mean don't drink, but ask myself, why am I drinking? Do I want to have this drink? And so just, there's this term, sober curious, which really just means that you might not identify as
Yeah.
completely sober. You might not have had struggles with alcohol on, an addiction level or anything like that, but you might just be, hey, sometimes this doesn't make me feel so good. Or
Yeah.
maybe sometimes it's like, I always reach for the booze when I'm really stressed. Is that
Mhm.
a healthy way to be consuming alcohol? Maybe that's a coping mechanism, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just about like opening the conversation in my mind and allowing people to have the ability to explore that free of judgment, free of, what anyone else is thinking so that you can make that decision for yourself. And I always say, you should never feel guilty to make a decision that is best for you. Oh,
Okay. Never make a decision that is best. And then, all right, go. I'll cut this out. Don't worry.
okay. Sorry, I don't know where we're cut off for a second there.
So you mentioned making a decision that's best for you, and then it cut off for a couple seconds. But I'll cut this. No worries.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, exactly that, right? I think that and then it's about finding those occasions where non-alcoholic can fit into your life as well. And so, like you said, it might be like, okay, well, typically I'm having, a beer or two with dinner on every evening or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Well, what if I sub one of those out? And I think that's when we start to discover these aha moments that I like to say, and you go, ah, this is filling that exact need,
Yeah.
that same ritual, the same taste profile, but actually I wasn't craving the booze or the alcohol or the effects of alcohol in this setting, right? And many times, again, just because of how alcohol has been so ingrained to society, sometimes it's about all of these different things that alcohol brings rather than the alcohol itself, right? It's the
Yeah.
connection, the intimate
Hmm.
moments, the celebration, right? And so with Groovy, it's like, you don't have to miss out on any of those moments. You can still have a celebratory glass of champagne at your wedding, and it doesn't have
Yeah.
to actually be alcoholic. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, it's really just about giving people, in my opinion, that permission.
I think the permission piece is huge. Annika, we had the opportunity this last season. One of the things that kept coming up was those pivoting moments where you felt like your life was going one way and then something happened, whether it's life actually pushing you or giving you an opportunity, allowing you permission to step into that next phase. I was really interested in hearing that your background was in neuroscience, right? And now you're stepping into a field that is heavily involved with how we build thought patterns. And you talked about neuroplasticity, and like I'm a brain geek myself as well, so I'm sure we could talk about this till days end. But I'm wondering for you, like, what was the pivoting moment? You mentioned that you were getting yourself ready for med school. You mentioned that this started back in 2019. What was the pivoting moment for you? Because you've also had an opportunity to work with your brother, which I love. I'm the oldest of five, and I think we all want to be in business together to some extent. So something had to have happened. Like, I would love to understand what that moment was for you.
Yeah, so I think it was, it's not one thing. It was really a combination and a culmination of different pieces all happening kind of at the same time. And so, partly, yes, I had this interest in med school and in pursuing kind of a career in neuroscience, but also I started to just get a little bit deeper with myself because I knew that if I wanted to go and be I thought neurosurgery, that was going to be 14 more years of schooling. So that was going to
Oh,
drastically change the direction of my life, right? And so it was like, okay, am I committed to this? So much so. Am I so passionate that I'm ready for 14 more years, head down, really into school, starting my life, starting my first job probably at 35. And so my whole life is shifting than what I potentially imagined. And so I had to
yeah,
get real with myself there. So I kind of took a step back, just kind of thinking about that. And then, like I said, at the same time, I'm discovering and questioning this relationship with alcohol and realizing that there's this gap in the market. My brother had taken a year off his previous job at Salesforce. And so he was kind of figuring out what he wanted to do next. And he's always very much had that entrepreneurial spirit. He had an
hmm,
app previously since he was little. He was always finding, some little way of like, in the neighborhood selling cookies or like selling people's furniture, doing this, that.
I love those
Um,
stories.
and so it was, not necessarily one strict moment, but I think we were all just kind of figuring out what was next for us. And this opportunity was there and it was glowing. And I think, what pushed us forward is for me, med school, it's always going to be there. I can always go back to that. It
Yeah,
wasn't going to be an opportunity that I was going to miss at this moment. Whereas stepping into this completely new experience with my brother, with my family, we have our parents involved in the business as well. And so kind of pulled them out of retirement to help us out. And so it was just this culmination where, okay, we have this moment right now. None of us have something that's lined up for what's next. So why don't we just try it? Let's just go in. And I think that my brother really pushed us in the sense of I'm maybe a bit more of the perfectionist. And so I can sometimes hold myself back there, like, oh, we need to have all the answers, right? And he's like,
yeah.
let's just start. Let's see where it goes, right? And so we did. And I think that we just didn't overthink this one. We were like, let's just go. You can always go back to plan B. It will be there. And we just dove head first. And so pretty much um, as we started, iterating and kind of starting to delve into the world of beverage where neither of us had any experience at all. And so we had to start from scratch, learning a lot, finding partners that were going to be able to brew our beers, winemakers
Mhm.
to make our wines with. And then we actually packed up and the whole family moved out to Denver to actually launch Grüvi.
All right. So I had to educate myself on what the brewing process is. And so I personally did not know this, and I didn't know that this was a different approach. Because growing up, like my thought process behind non-alcoholic beverage was like the O'Douls, right?
Mhm.
My dad, who also was sober for almost 10 years, like that was kind of his drink of choice during that time. And I remember thinking to myself, and even as I grew up and, into high school and beyond, tasted it, and I was like, this, no
Not so
hate
good.
on them, no shade on them. It's not so good. It's just this is like the Budweiser of beers, and I don't know if I like this.
Yeah.
Can you enlighten us, Anika, on like what the brewing process is? Because it sounds like you guys did something that I think is incredibly cool, which I would also guess is another reason why you moved the operation to Denver. So, what's the process like?
Yeah, so beers and wines are obviously have a completely different process as well, but at the core, somewhat similar. And so what we're doing is we're actually brewing a full strength beer, and then we're gently removing the alcohol. So we're not using high heat, we're almost using a bit more of filtration system. I can't get into the nitty-gritty secret sauce details there.
I
Um,
won't. I won't share. It's okay.
and actually what we're doing then, so we're removing the alcohol and then we're actually finishing on another fermentation. And so this is the really unique piece there, to do essentially 2 rounds of full fermentation. If I take our lager, for example, which is our golden, and it won the gold medal at the World
Very
Beer
good.
Cup in 2022. So out of 135 non-alcoholic beers, it got first place. And so what makes it really unique, one, it was going through this full lagering process, so 8 weeks of lagering, and then we're removing the alcohol, and then we're fermenting it one more time. And so that last fermentation is really what's able to give it this clean, crisp finish that is really rare sometimes to find in a non-alcoholic beer, because often there's just a little bit of those muddied flavors, or if you're using high heat to remove alcohol, some of the bigger brands tend to do that. It can have a little bit of an off flavor, a bit of a metallic flavor that comes through. And so again, that second fermentation just gives it this really clean, crisp finish. And then on the wine side, again, multiple awards. Our sangria also just got a gold medal this past year. And so we've made, some amazing strides on the perception and what actually can taste like a delicious non-alcoholic beer or wine. Again, the goal for it to taste exactly like your favorite alcoholic beer or wine is what we're
Yeah,
after, right? And so yeah, it's taken, iterations, and we're never at the point of feeling like it's perfect. So we're constantly iterating and innovating, playing around with new tech, how we can make our products better. And I don't know if you've noticed on any of the cans that you've had, but we've actually also implemented something called our Discovery Series. And so these are some cans. They have a
okay.
QR code on the front of the can. And we use this QR code to get direct feedback from our community. So you scan it and it takes you to a quick survey, and it says, how would you rate the sangria? What did you like about it? What would you
Yeah,
change about it? What didn't you like? And so every single day we're getting real feedback from our customers on these
that's
products.
great.
And because we're small, we're nimble, right? We're not the big guys yet. We're able to quickly iterate on these products and make improvements, make tweaks along the way. And so we'll launch multiple batches of a product as well. And I think that that's just been kind of authentic to us, because again, we didn't start with this background as a brewer or as a winemaker, right?
Yeah,
And so it was like, taste can be so subjective. Who am I to be like, this is what everyone wants, this is the best tasting,
yeah,
beer
yeah.
or wine? Why don't we actually talk to them, have real conversations, and work together to create these products? And so yeah, in retrospect, it's turned out amazing to be able to have global recognition for what we've created.
I mean, that part's got to feel good. Annika, I would love to tap into you as an entrepreneur. I oftentimes tell this story of what it's like to be an entrepreneur, and I don't know if you share this, but at any given moment, I'm either feeling really great about what I'm doing or questioning whether I should just blow this shit up and completely just go do something else. Um, I would love to tap into for you. Obviously, in the last 5 years, Grüvi has made some extensive shifts and some powerful moves into getting a lot of the accolades and flowers that you all deserve. Um, for you, like, have there been personal moments where you're like, I am doing the wrong thing? Like, I need to go back to neuroscience, or I need to go get a 9 to 5 that I don't care about. Like, what has that process been like for you?
It's been really interesting. And I think that, my perspective might be different from others because, again, Groovy was the first job really out of university that I had. I had went head first into it. So I never worked in kind of a corporate 9 to 5 setting. So I don't really have that means of comparison
Hmm.
to, being my own boss in a way and being an entrepreneur. I think that, a roller coaster is the best way to describe it. There are lots of ups and there's lots of downs. And I think for me, also, it's been at this pivotal point in life where, I dove headfirst at age 22 into a business. And so I didn't necessarily know the level of responsibility that I was about to take on. I didn't at that point have, like I said, a lot of confidence in who I am. I had no background, no expertise. So definitely those feelings of imposter syndrome have been really
Yeah.
strong for me. I mean, again, coming back to the Forbes list, right? And even now I'm doing more speaking engagements and had my first keynote speech. And I'm like, who am I to be standing up on this stage,
Yeah.
right? And so it's definitely had ups and downs. I think what's made it really special is, having my brother in this business with me, having my parents in it with me, my boyfriend as well. So pretty much everyone I know is
Yeah.
within Groovy, but that support system has been really strong. And so at certain points, yeah, sometimes you're more energized and excited, and sometimes you're just like, okay, I need a tiny bit of a step back for a moment.
Yeah.
But I have full trust and such a supportive team that that's okay. Like they can give me that space. And this
Mhm.
last year has been, one of those pivotal years for me where I've, on top of, running the business, had some health issues that I've had to be dealing with at the same time. And so
Mhm.
it's been hard because it's your baby and you always want to give it your all. And to find that balance, right? I think something that a lot of us strive for in
Yeah.
work life, but even when we talk about alcohol, right? Like that's also something where it comes back to balance. What is that balance that's a healthy relationship for you? Balance is a very, very hard thing to strive for.
Agreed.
And what I found is I think sometimes people set these unrealistic goals around balance, right? We often see the kind of diagrams and you have, your work, your love, your social, all
Yeah.
of these different
Yeah.
areas of life that you're trying to spend time in. And I've kind of reframed the way that I think about balance. And to me, I think about less about these quadrants that you're trying to spend time in and more about the fluidity between these areas of life. And
Yeah.
so how can I have love in work? How can I have wellness in work, right? How can I combine social connections with wellness? All of these different things that how can I be a little bit more fluid in life versus these quadrants that I'm trying to check off because as an entrepreneur, it just wasn't feasible for me to try to
Yeah.
achieve something like that.
That's so true. I just got done having a conversation with another tech app that is helping people to examine their relationship with alcohol because we're going to be celebrating bringing in that focus in the new year. And one of the things that came up, Annika, and I'm sure that you can touch on this, is like as an entrepreneur, like you're wearing a bunch of different hats. And I don't know about you, but when business is doing great, my marriage and parenthood and other things are kind of just like down here. And it's like, how do I bring these back? I do notice that how I take care of myself through this is something that is something that's very consistent. So I'm wondering, Annika, for you, like, are there habits and rituals that allow you to show up as a more present or a healthier version of yourself? Like, are there things that you're like, these things right here I can't do without because they allow me to show up as Annika?
Yeah, I think every day I'm finding, new kind of rituals to bring in. But for me, what's been really crucial, especially again this past year, as I've been dealing with a little bit more of health issues and some
Hmm.
gut issues and some autoimmune things. And so it's come back to like health truly is one of the most important things that you have. If you
Yeah.
do not have your health, you cannot show up. You cannot show up for work. You cannot show up for your team. And so it's really just been like, okay, you need to make the time. You need to focus on this. And so for me, it's actually it's coming back to myself, right? And so I think often we think of self-care and we think of all these like little rituals of like, okay, some me
Yeah.
time, let me have a bath and all of
A
these different things.
journal.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and don't get me wrong, I love those and I have a lot of those
Hmm.
practices. But what's been the most instrumental is almost what I kind of call my sit and process time. And it's not, I think I could find a more glam word for it at some
No, I
point,
love it.
but
No, sit and process. It's direct. I understand
e-
what you're talking about.
exactly. And so it's like, like you said at the beginning of this talk, we go from thing to thing to thing, right? And when do we actually just sit there? And so for me, it's turned into a little ritual. I'll go to the park for a minimum just 30 minutes. I bring nothing with me, maybe just, maybe a journal, and maybe, some music to listen to.
Mhm.
And I just sit at the park and I just process the day. I let go of the stresses. What am I actually feeling? What am I struggling with right now? And I just start to come back to myself, because I think it's so easy for us to serve all the other people. And again, we might serve ourselves in some of these superficial self-care ways, but the most is like your emotional self, right? How can you let
Yeah.
go of things? And I think for me, again, that perfectionist piece. So I I put a lot of pressure on myself. And so just coming to a space, sometimes I cry, I just let it out and
Yeah.
it feels so good. And so making that time dedicated to that has been probably the most instrumental piece that I've implemented into, my lifestyle recently.
Mhm. You know what's funny about that is I was going on a walk the other day, and I've seen this very frequently is like bird watching communities, and I've never really given it a second thought. And the other day, I found myself walking and looking at a couple who were just doing some bird watching, and I stopped and I'm like, this looks peaceful as hell. Like I'm sure doing something like this is one of the like newest, dopest ways of being more meditative in everything that I do. And I had mentioned this
Hmm.
on like threads and I just threw it on. I was like, I don't know if it's because I'm turning 38 or if this seems like a really cool mindfulness activity, but I feel like bird watching is going to be my new thing. And I love hearing you talk about what stillness does for you in your life, because we're talking about getting ready for a really big campaign in January for you all.
Yeah.
As you find yourself thinking all the thoughts, doing all the things, are there things even when you're in the thick of it, Anika, that are really helpful for you to just stay present, to stay still, outside of going to the park, but more like when you're in it?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, think a meditation practice has also been instrumental. Recently, I've gotten a little bit more into breath work as well, and I'll give a shout out to Open. They have an
Mm,
app, and so they have, a series of movements, meditations, and breath work. And recently, I moved out to LA, so they actually have an in-person space. But it's something like a 6 minute little breath work. Again, these tiny little breaks throughout my day, throughout this busy period that we're going in, so that I can just create a moment to pause, right? A moment to process. So I think that that's been super helpful. I'm also a big, you know, again, because I carry so much, and I feel like as an entrepreneur, again, your brain has so many things going on at so
so
many
many
times.
things.
Some of these assisted rituals, these assisted ways to let go are helpful for me. So I've also gotten really big into, kind of contrast therapy. So doing a sauna and a cold plunge. And that was actually my Christmas gift that I opened yesterday from
No,
my
I love it.
brother. He got me one of those blow up, mini
Yeah.
cold plunges that I'll have to set up in our backyard.
Hey, he was
But
a
again,
sucker for the ads. I just did the same thing. I got the sauna
all
and the
over
cold plunge,
Instagram.
all the ads.
There you go. But yeah, to me, it's a great way, again, to just actually physically allow your body to de-stress. And so just trying to implement as many of those little pieces as I can. And again, coming back to a little saying that I like to say is 80% done is 100% freaking awesome. And I come back to that almost on a
Oh,
daily basis.
I'm marking that clip. I'm using that 100%. Thank you.
It's great, right? Because if we hold ourselves to 100% all the time, it's not feasible. We're going to drain ourselves out. If you come
Yeah.
back to that little saying, 80% done, 100% freaking awesome, especially if you have a team that's helping you out, right? And so if I'm not doing all that 80%, like, let's take it, let's use it, let's roll with it. And we can
Mhm.
hold ourselves back sometimes, right? And so I kind of also gotten into the motto, like, never be the one to say no to yourself, right?
Mhm.
Don't hold yourself back. Don't let fear hold you back. And to me, this is actually goes into what I actually talked about in one of my keynote speeches, that fear comes up in so many different ways, and almost all aspects of our lives, fear shows up, right? And it can feel
Yeah.
really scary and daunting. And I think often when we think of resilience, for example, we think that we have to just like knock them down one after another, right? Like just keep going. And really, again, it comes back to this sit and process, like feel the fear, understand why it's so scary to you,
Yeah.
and then figure out what that next step that you can take to just move through it. And to me, most of the time, the antidote there is vulnerability. If you can just come back to yourself and actually be a little bit more vulnerable, it's not going to be so scary.
I mean, vulnerability is a scary thing in itself.
Oh, it is. It is. It is.
I mean, like, because I mean, I'm a huge Brené Brown fan. I really love the image that she paints, where it's like if you were to grow shame in a petri dish, the three things that it needs to grow is silence, secrecy, and judgment. And the only antidote to that is vulnerability, which is a fearful thing in itself, right? And I tend to
Yeah,
find, Annika, that repetition for me in my life is the only thing that allows me to feel more comfortable with showing up vulnerably in all the different areas that I do. You mentioned fear a little bit earlier and how hard that is. I mean, if you're kind of looking ahead of a launch, right? January is a big time for you all. Are there fears that come up for you? I mean, you're 5 years into this. You're growing at a really cool rate. You're celebrating your successes. I mean, are there still fears that like Annika thinks about on a day-to-day basis?
of course. And I think that they're never going to go away, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I think even too, as we've grown, you bring on, we've done some financing rounds, you bring on investors, right? So now the accountability to the business, it feels scarier, right? It feels like, okay, I need to reach some of these goals because I don't want to let other people down for it, right? And so coming into dry January, it's expected to be our biggest dry January. We need to make sure we deliver on these things. Um, but I think it comes back to, again, staying connected with yourself. At the end of the day, it's my business, my brother's business. We know best. We're in, the details and the nitty-gritty aspects of it on a daily basis. And so just coming back to your purpose, your why, and at the end of the day,
Mhm.
what we're doing with Grüvi is bigger than just a product. It's bigger than just a beverage. It's about normalizing non-alcoholic options. It's about giving people permission to live a healthier lifestyle. And we've heard countless stories of how having Grüvi has actually truly changed people's lives, allowed them to have a piece of themselves back. And so when you come back to that bigger mission that you're working on, the fear of that moment doesn't seem so scary, right? Because you know what
Yeah.
you're trying to get to. And so I think that's how you can kind of ground yourself.
Oh, I always have trouble with the manifestation piece, because I'm constantly looking at the end goal. And I think what you're reminding me, Annika, of right now is how important the process is and how important the people that you surround yourself with, and even more so, an inherent belief and a permission, if you will, to allow yourself to be fearful. Because anyone who's been out there, especially with those listening in our pod family, when you're chasing something really scary and it's scary, it's probably because you're doing the right thing, because it gets you out of your comfort zone, which
Yep.
I think, Annika, after a conversation like this, just a really great reminder that it's okay to have things scare the shit out of you, because that's where discomfort is.
Yeah, exactly, right. Finding those little pieces of comfort and discomfort, and something that that resonated with me recently too. I've been following along with, other entrepreneurial journeys. And I think sometimes, like you said, you're head down trying to get to this end goal, right? And if you don't enjoy the moment, and I think it's funny because it's also ingrained into our messaging and our copy of what we talk about Groovy, right? Enjoy every single moment. And
Hmm.
the name Groovy itself too, right? This joyful, this fun piece is you need to kind of have some fun in the journey along
Yeah.
the way,
Yeah.
right? But I recently found an entrepreneur that, you know, actually sold the business and had amazing acquisition, right? And you think that sometimes that's the end goal of what you're trying to get to. And she's shared pretty vulnerably about, well, it's not all what it made out to be. Like now all of a sudden I'm missing my baby, this thing that I was a part of for so many
I
years that I
know.
grew, that was my whole life. And yay, I had an acquisition, but now what, right? Now who am I? And struggling with that piece. And it was like, okay, make sure to actually enjoy this moment now, because
Yeah.
at some point, no matter how stressful it is right now or what a toll it is, you're gonna miss it, right? And it's gonna be gone
Yeah.
from you. This moment's never gonna be here again. And so how can you actually relish in it a little bit more? And having this conversation today is a reminder for me as well, right? Because we forget that on a daily basis, I think. And so you have to set little reminders for yourself, because, every day is a new day and you're not going to be able to relive the exact same experience again. So whether it's a good or a bad experience, it's still an experience that is adding growth and value to your life.
Oh, yeah. Anika, speaking of fun, I am so thankful to you for taking the time for us today. I know you're on your holiday right now and you're jumping on a podcast, so it is a little bit of work, but hopefully it's been fun for you. Because I know for me, what I really love about this podcast is I get to invite people on and have really inspiring and thought provoking conversations. And so I know that I'm leaving this with a nice little fire in my gut of like, hey, it's okay, it's gonna work out. So I so
Yeah.
appreciate you, Anika, for spending some time with us. I mentioned in our email beforehand where it's like, hey, it's an organic convo. I don't really pre-list questions. However, I do ask any of our guests the same two questions, and it's one that I've come to really, really enjoy. So here's question one, and then we'll have our last question. And I want to send you back to your family to enjoy the rest of your holiday. Thanks again for spending some time with us. All right. So, first question. Obviously, this is the Can't Believe I Made It podcast. So, for you, have you made it? And if not, what does making it look like for you in your season of life?
Wow. I really like that question. Um, reflecting back on our conversations, I'm gonna say yeah, actually, which I, going into this, I
80%
would have,
done.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I would have said no, probably pre-conversation, but thinking and kind of reflecting on our conversation today, I think that again, you can't always just be striving to get somewhere. And I think
Hmm.
it is the most important thing to enjoy the process. And so to have, you know, joy around each moment that you're living and feeling like you have made it for at least the moment that I am today, right?
Yeah.
I'm still striving to get somewhere, but I think that having confidence in where you are today and being able to kind of relish in that is super important. So I'll say yes to that. And I
Okay.
think there's a follow up little piece there. What was that
Yeah.
again?
Yeah. So the follow up piece is where can our community find you? What can we support you with? Obviously, we're recording this on what's today, the 27th. This will get launched during one of your biggest campaigns. So, where can people find you? How can we support you? Anika, you're doing some really cool things in the space. Yeah. How can we celebrate you?
Awesome. Well, yeah, we're heading into dry January. So I honestly encourage anyone listening to this, based off of our conversations today, have the, willingness to just be curious, right? Explore that. Doing dry January, you don't need to commit to, 100% or nothing. You can take it one day at a time. You can go for a dry-ish January, but just allow yourself to explore that relationship with alcohol, in the sense of supporting Groovy, following along on social. We've really made this year expanded a lot into retail. So you can find us now in about 200 Whole Foods across the country. So if you see us in retail stores, really appreciate you picking us up. And again, we have the QR code, scan it, give us your honest feedback. We're always listening. And yeah, just, I'd love to hear if anyone does do a dry January. Desi, if you're in, if
Please.
you're people doing it, it's a really cool and transformational experience. And many times, I think last year we did a survey, we did this little post dry Jan survey, and 99% of people said that they would do it again, right? So it obviously had this positive impact into their life. So yeah, and on regular, if you kind of want to follow a little bit more, I guess, behind the scenes of the ups and downs of roller coaster entrepreneurial journeys, you can find me at Sawni on Instagram.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I'm going to be doing a driest January for a couple reasons, because there's some different type of tech that I wanted to test out, and because a lot of the people that I work with and a lot of our people inside of the community are very habit oriented. It's understanding human behavior, which from a neuroscience perspective, I know probably pings you a little bit because it's so freaking cool. But
Yeah.
Anika, I'm so thankful for you for stepping on today. I know that you're celebrating with your family right now. So thank you so much for taking the time. And for our listeners out there, I will put all of the information that you need in the show notes. And I look forward to a lot of the social content that we'll be producing and celebrating Grüvi. So Anika, you're the best. Don't go anywhere real quick. I want to talk with you before we get done here. But my friend, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. This was a great conversation. Thanks for having me.